She is on? Okay.
No.
Oh, no, sir. Okay, sorry. Well, we'll give her a minute or two to get on. Okay, I will get him to resend it to you. All right.
Hey, Chase.
All right. Just talk to Ms. Craybill. She does not have the link. Can someone resend that to her, please?
Chase.
'Cause I just went on my calendar. Okay, they're trying to send it to you a different way. I will. I'll do that right now. All right. Well, it is by my watch 9:08. We'll go ahead and start. Call this policy meeting to order. Am I on? Make sure. Yes, I am. Very good. Mr. Boyer is not able to join us today, so he's asked me to step in. So we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 9:08. We'll step right into. We'll kind of get right back into it. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here this morning. Let's move into number 2, which is the approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
And I'll second. How do you vote, Ms. Craybill?
Yes.
And I also vote yes, so that'll move us right back into line. Approval of minutes. The recommendation here is to approve the minutes.
Well, I before I make a motion to approve the minutes, I needed to ask Deborah a question.
Okay.
I think that we for policy 6425, continuing contracts, 6441 bidders list, and 6442 vendors list, we decided not to adopt those, if I remember correctly. Is that right? Mary Hazel, you might jump in on that too.
I will have to go back and look at my notes from last time. I don't remember right offhand.
Okay, well, I am not at my house, but when I was reading through this one last time, last night.
Okay, so you recording?
Oh, I don't know. Are we recording?
Yes, we are.
Stephanie, what were the numbers?
It was 6425 continuing contracts, 6441 bidders lists, and 6442 vendor lists. They were on our agenda last month to review, and I remember us reviewing them, but I don't have my list with me on the ones that we decided not to go forward with. So those are the only three policies that we didn't have any action on at all. Keep, stay, send forward.
My copies indicate that 41 and 42 we did not adopt because they were addressed in another policy, and the same with 25. We kind of consolidated. 6425 was consolidated with, and now I can't read my writing, 6420.
Okay, so that's what I was. I didn't know if our minutes should reflect that we discussed them, but we opted not to accept them. Do we need to do that, Deborah?
I think that it says that they were discussed. And so there was a reflection that they were discussed, but if no action was taken, I mean, I don't recall a motion specifically saying
There
that,
was no.
you know, what we
motion.
will or
Yeah,
well,
there was
so-
no motion. That's.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up, but if there was no action taken, there's nothing to reflect. It does reflect that they were discussed.
I know. But we don't have to reflect in our minutes that we're not adopting them.
No, you don't have to reflect the absence of action taken. I mean, if there was an affirmative decision to do something, but as part of the discussion, for example, 60, one of them was 6425, I think, was decided to merge it with one of the other policies. So just don't.
But isn't that an action?
Well, it was
Isn't
part of it can certainly, Ms. Crable, it can certainly, if you feel like it would be clearer and more accurate to include it, that can be done. But unless there's action taken, there's not a requirement to reflect, again, the absence of action. But if there's something that was done that you feel isn't reflected, then we can certainly, that should be added or could be added.
I guess I'm just thinking that we did take action. We consolidated 6425 into 6420. We decided consciously to do that. And then we decided consciously not to accept 6441 and 6442. But if you don't think it's necessary, then we won't.
Again, I mean, that's included in the discussion. I don't think it's required, but certainly there's nothing wrong with including it in there if you feel it would be more accurate. She's frozen up again. It looks like we lost her.
Well, give her a minute to get back in, I guess.
How does it work when we're down to one committee member?
We have to postpone the meeting because there has to be a
Right.
quorum present.
Right.
Yeah, if we're not able to get her back, we'll have to stop.
Unless you guys all want to come to my house, my horses got out this morning. You can all come over and help me refence the yard. Any takers? Anybody? I honestly, I guarantee you that Castlehane Elementary School is talking about the horses running up and down Lynn Avenue this morning because I had a whole bunch of help out there getting them back. I'm surprised I didn't have anybody ask me to bring them in for show and tell, but that may be in the future. All right, Ms. Crable, you back? Let me try her on the phone.
You may have to call in versus being on the video because the video takes more gigs than she could do phone and she could actually hear versus being face to face.
All right, so I just spoke with her. She's lost the internet. She is now trying to dial in. Boom, boom, boom. Ms. Brinson, how would we know if Ms. Crable is successful getting in via phone?
It still would come up asking her to be let in. So whoever's moderating the meeting, it still should come up with her requesting to join.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
So Deborah, should I just not let this be an issue?
So I think that, I mean, by implication, 64, 41, and 42 they were not moved for approval. So they were discussed, but they didn't move forward. You could certainly indicate that there was a discussion, and by consensus, those two policies were omitted. And then 6425, that was a discussion. All of that was just included in the changes to another policy, and that would reflect being in, we don't necessarily put in the minutes every change that's made to every policy. So really what 6425 was a change to another policy. But again, if you think that it's more accurate to reflect that what the discussion was in more detail, that can be done. But I don't believe it's legally necessary.
Okay, then I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Could you say that again, please?
I think I heard her say that you wanted to approve the minutes. Is that correct, Ms. Crable?
Yes, approve the minutes.
Okay, I'll second. Ms. Crable, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. So it passes. Then we move into policy updates. First one I have in my packet is the New Hanover County Schools policy admission of homeschool students in draft form. Ms. Crable, do you have any comments on that one?
Yeah, first of all, I wanted to know like where it's coming from and whose department is doing it and what the policy number is going to be.
Good question.
I don't know if Mr. O'Brien is on here. This is a policy that was raised in the discussion of allowing athletic participation by dually enrolled students, by homeschool students. And there was a long discussion about the need for a policy about when homeschool students would be allowed to enroll part-time. And so McKenna sent some different examples of different policies used in other districts. I had some conversations with Mr. O'Brien, and he sent me a draft that looked very much like this, and I made some recommended changes. But I have not seen this. I have not discussed this version with him. I'm not sure. It looks like they accepted some of my changes, but not all of them. So I'm not sure where this particular version has come from.
I have a ton of questions about it. So I'm just wondering, this is like a semantic, but elementary students would be, a letter A, and then letter B would be middle middle school and high school, but I was thinking that we probably need to even break that up into two, B middle school and C high school, because if sports is our primary thing, then we don't use what number 10 says about rules of the high school sports association in there. And then there's little like numbers that you would use for footnotes, number 1, 2, and 3, but they don't footnote anything. And then just wondering if we get any ADM dollars for homeschooled students, to cover the transportation that we're going to be providing them, if it's available. Does a half a day mean a certain number of blocks, or does it mean consecutive blocks? And in number 7, it says the principal may also require appropriate testing. And to me, the principal has to be consistent across the whole county. Otherwise, I may not be able to get into one school, but I could get into another. So I just think that this is not quite ready for us to roll with.
And I would concur. I think there's a lot of questions I had also, similar ones. And if the grand purpose is to allow homeschool students to be part of our athletic teams, even just liability. I had a question about, we put a homeschool student on our bus, there's an accident, where do we sit in the whole liability scheme? And we certainly have enough concerns in that area already without adding to it. So I would concur that I think we need to send this back for and probably get Mr. O'Brien here for our next meeting so he can kind of talk to some of our questions.
Hi, this is Julie Varnum. I can answer a couple of those questions, but I don't disagree that there are questions that need to be answered that I certainly wouldn't be able to entertain. One, if they are duly enrolled, then they are enrolled with New Hanover County Schools, even if it's on a part-day schedule. Therefore, ADM is able to be drawn, and then they are students. So that would cover any liability perspective. But the other portions of it, I certainly wouldn't be able to answer. So I did have a discussion with Mr. O'Brien about the enrollment particulars.
As far as I think it was number 10, number 1, where they're talking, the discussion there is speaking about the North Carolina Athletics Association. That just means the grading. And so those rules, in order for an individual to play, participate, that's number 10, number 1, by the rules of North Carolina High School Association. There's specific rules that they have to abide by to keep us in the conference. And so that we don't go outside of those rules. If we go outside of those rules, then it can cost us severely. So there are rules that we have to abide by, and that's what that's speaking of. And I mean, of course, I think instead of just picking parts of it apart, I think we could actually have our new athletic director, the district athletic director, on the call next time to help with this one.
Okay.
And I guess we should be talking about middle school sports too, because we do have requirements, not through the North Carolina High School Sports Association, but through our own policies and procedures. So if we're talking about middle and high school, then I think we need to have some verbiage directly for both of them. And then when it's really talking about, and when we start talking about graduation requirements, that doesn't really apply, to middle school kids, unless they're taking a course that, let's say in the 8th grade, that could apply towards high school graduation. There's just kind of, and then, it just seems a little, we need a little more detail.
I would agree with that.
Why don't we hold off on this one? We'll ask our new athletic director to join us for our next meeting in November, and we can further discuss and clarify this New Hanover County policy on homeschool students. And I so move.
And is it going to have can somebody give us a number? Is it going to have a potential number so that or are we just going to call it the homeschool policy for now?
I could ask McKenna where it would go in our manual,
Okay.
get a
great.
number.
Okay.
Okay,
So we have a motion on the table there, Ms. Craybill.
yes.
You second, okay, and you yes it, okay, good. So we will hold off on that policy. We move on to 3420, student promotion and accountability. And the changes are on the 4th page.
So, Mr. Wildebohr, if I could start.
Please
This
do.
policy was recommended by my office for revision. It was brought to my attention that when the policy was adopted, it did not reflect current district practice. And within our curriculum course guide, we were allowing greater flexibility within this policy than what the policy stated. So the suggestion and the recommendation was made to align the policy to district practice. Upon further consultation with student support services, we now recognize that there are some concerns with making the recommended changes. And so what I'd like to recommend for today is just that we pull this policy and look at going back and aligning current practices to what's in the policy. The concerns around making these changes would be providing greater opportunity for grade manipulation, although on the part of just a few students, but there would be concerns about this. And if that were the case, then there would be concerns about how our students' performance would be perceived by other entities outside the district. And I'll definitely open it up to Ms. Varnum if she'd like to add some additional details in regards to that.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Smith. The concern is that, as Dr. Smith shared, the policy, as it's written currently, gives us a pretty strong framework that is consistent with other high-performing districts, and to allow a flexibility greater than what's listed in policy could very much be disreputable to our students, and could possibly be perceived as GPA manipulation. What's written in policy, again, is consistent with high-performing districts, and is my recommendation, and Dr. Smith and I talked about this, and I think we were in full agreement that our curriculum course guide needs to now reflect what this policy says, so that we don't have disproportionate access, and we make sure that applying any grade suppression is systematic and not quite so flexible.
So the recommendation, Dr. Smith and Ms. Varnum, is to hold off on this, or is it to just leave it as it is?
So to leave it as it is. So to
Okay.
remove this from the policy discussion for today and to allow the current policy to remain as is.
Okay. I would like to make such a motion, Ms. Craybill.
Second.
All right. We will say that those two votes, we will put this, we'll leave it alone. So we'll leave 3420 alone, which moves us on to 2230. Change my thing here.
Yeah, though both 2230 and 6140 are going to remain in policy because our board committee work is still not finalized, and it finalized enough to bring to the board, to bring to this committee, with all the edits. And then the student wellness, we can't move forward with this until we have a joint meeting with the school health advisory team, the SHAC, and the board to determine if we want to have additional goals. So until that work session or whatever we want to do, 6140 has to stay on hold.
Okay, so we're going to leave 20. You make the motion to leave 2230 and 6140.
I'm making a motion. We're 2230 And 6140 will remain in policy along with the other two that we just talked about.
Okay. And I'll second that. And we will vote yay and yay. It's a little bit informal, but that's okay.
Yes, yay and yay.
Yay and yay. We get to the next policy. So our next policy is 6522 by my reckoning. If I can get through 6140.
Yes.
We're just moving right along here.
So I was just, when reading through this policy, this is one that I would almost prefer that we not do it to the extent that is written in this policy. I have no problem with community members using, our media center. I do have a little bit of problem with that, when our schools are in session. So I guess we would need to define when the centers are open to the public. And then members of the community, leasing out our property. Do we do that? I mean, I don't know that is a business that we want to get into.
This is Mary Hazel. We already have community use policy, but we have never loaned out equipment and materials as per this policy. So I was going to recommend it not be considered as well.
Well, and we always get into that sticky area. If we do loan things out, what happens if it's damaged? Do you get it back? How do you get it back? How can you try to, get the money for it if it's damaged? So yeah, I would, if you two feel like we should not do this policy, does anyone else want to chime in on 6522?
I'm not aware this has been our practice, but if the rest of the leadership team knows more than me, please chime in.
Okay.
Do I
Hearing
have to
nothing,
make a motion not to move it forward, not to accept it?
I think that'd be wonderful.
All right, so then this one will be recorded in the minutes, unlike the other two. But 6522, I'll make that motion when we get to the end.
Okay. Well, let's move on then. Go ahead.
Mr. Wildebohr, but before we go on, I forgot to do this in the very beginning. I wanted to just welcome Jennifer Carey, our NC representative, our representative from NC Papa, who is with us today. So thank you, Jennifer, for being here and working through these policies with us.
Thank you, Ms.
Yes.
Crable.
Thank you for being here, Jennifer. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Now our next policy is 6524, network security. Ms. Brinson, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think we discussed this once before. After looking at it and talking with Ms. Stagner, we're okay with this as worded, except for the places where it says the technology director or designee. We would probably change it to the director of network security.
And not the assistant superintendent for, not to include your title in there at all?
Well, we could do that. I mean, if you're going to say because it says right, the initial one about user ID talks about as determined by the superintendent or technology director. And then it talks about that. So yeah, we could change it to assistant superintendent if you want. That's perfectly fine. Because then I can delegate.
I think the reason why it's saying technology director is because in most districts there's a director. I mean, the assistant super is the director. So I think
Gotcha.
they're using this one and the same.
Okay, so what do we want to use? Assistant superintendent or the director of cybersecurity?
Assistant soup.
Okay, that's what I think. It just makes it more official.
Yeah, and it makes it, what we do. So that makes sense. So if we can make those.
The only other thing
changes.
I had in here, and I forgot where I wrote myself a note on the very top. Do we need to designate any differences in this between employees, which would include subs, students, visitors, and parent support organizations that have, where it says that do not have access because we do give access? Or have we decided that we're not giving access at all to visitors and parent support organizations?
Right. Well, right now, we don't give them access unless it's a guest access and somebody like, let's say, the principal requests guest access for the PTA president, and then they have it for that short time frame that they're there.
Okay, so is that a policy thing or is that a procedural thing?
That's a procedural thing.
Okay. Yeah, and just as an aside, is it still you have to request 2 weeks in advance to get that guest access?
We would prefer it, but we've definitely done, the day of even.
Yeah, because a lot of times, I mean, as soon as you
Yep.
schedule your meeting, I guess you would need to probably request the access. Okay, so if that's procedural, then that's just something we need to make sure we let our parent support organizations know.
Mhm.
All right, thanks.
Okay. So I would entertain a motion to move this on with the changes.
I think we just do it at the end, Pete.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm
Okay.
just putting a check mark next to all the ones so we can.
All right.
At the end, and I'll make that motion.
Not a problem. All righty, we'll just go ahead and do it that way then. Instructional material services, 6525. I did have one question on this one, and I think I know the answer, but I want to make sure. Number 3, students who lose or fail to return issued textbooks. I don't know how many textbooks we use anymore, but are charged the cost of the book before replacement is issued. Is that full price or is that a prorated price if the book is 10, whatever, 6 years old, 5 years old, whatever?
So, Mr. Wildebohr, we had concerns about that in our office as well. And we also reached out to the NC Papa organization so that we would have principal representation, since they're the ones who are most close to this issue. And they had concerns about that line. In terms of the cost of the replacement book, what principals would like to see happen in this particular number would be that the last portion of that sentence be removed before a replacement will be issued. And then they would be able to handle this on a case-by-case basis. So there may be books that, a minimal cost would be charged to the family, or there may be other ways to resolve it. Their concerns were that, and if we left number 3 as it was, then students would not have access to textbooks or library books or other instructional materials.
Right. I would agree.
Yeah. And so do we need to do any word changing then on number 4? Because it's still making, they will be charged for it. So
yeah, and I think the point that Mr. Wildebohr made is that they will be charged for it, but by not talking about
when, like not getting another book.
Exactly, then we're not going to charge them necessarily the full cost. That discretion will be left to principals.
Okay.
Good.
I think
Okay.
it also may be helpful in number 1 to, it's talking about the condition of textbooks, including the condition of books. So textbooks does seem somewhat limiting, as Dr. Smith said. Sometimes it's library books, any other materials issued to the student. So I just wasn't sure about the wording to just limiting this to textbooks, and wondered what y'all thought.
Yeah, and that was my thought too, because like if we issue them, iPads or workbooks or anything that we give them, to do their assignments with, like even math manipulatives, if they take them home and then lose them all.
So we could add textbooks and or instructional materials.
Okay.
And I think maybe since we are moving 1-to-1, should we specifically call out the devices, the laptops and iPads in this?
I would. Yeah, that was where I was going with that, is that I'm more concerned probably about the iPads and the laptops than, the math manipulatives.
Is that covered in another policy somewhere, Dawn?
So,
I've been racking my brain thinking about it, and I really don't think it is. I don't, because we haven't been one-to-one yet. So I think we've sent letters home with parents, for them accepting responsibility, but I don't think there's a policy that addresses it.
Mhm. So it may make sense at the very front end, all students will be issued necessary textbooks, instructional materials and devices, or something like that, but to include it at the very beginning. And then you would want to adjust where it's only referencing textbooks.
Right, we could add the instructional materials and devices. I think it is important that we specify the devices.
and back to 3 and 4, I'm looking at our current procedures, which we issue every year, and it's a little softer. It says schools may collect textbook fines for lost or damaged books based on the book value, which is different than replacement cost. So I just didn't know if you wanted us to work on that language and bring it back and make it a little more flexible.
I like personally the charge the cost of, or charge the value of the book. Because that's like Blue Book, when you're buying a car.
Yeah, I like that better, because some of the books when we issue them might be 8 years old, right? And so the value is minimal, and there's probably not a charge. So
yeah, and if we're adding the other resources and materials and devices, I think that would be consistent with what we've been doing too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So number 3 should then say charge the value of the book, device, or instructional material. Okay.
Okay. We're keeping up with all those notes, I hope. I have them written down too, but okay.
Yeah, I'm writing them down. I'm sure Deborah is too.
Good. So
I
we're
see
gonna
her. I see her.
move that on to at the end. So we move on to 6530, resource conservation. I didn't have a whole bunch on this one.
So this is, we did not have an existing policy like this. And my only concern was number 6, because this is not something we've done in the past. We don't, we choose the suppliers for the products we want, but we don't normally advise them on their business model, which number 6 alludes to. So I didn't feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, like encouraging them to change their business to meet us. I had a question too, as we're talking about that, same with like number 4, where it says minimizing the use of biodegradable products where possible. I know that some schools either use or have piloted using different serving trays, in the cafeteria, and some schools like dump their food into the garbage can and then recycle their trays. Some schools, do their recycling of juice containers, but they make them pour their juice out into a bucket before they do the container. So Jennifer, maybe you have some thoughts on that, on how this works at the school level.
It does seem to be based on what resources are available and what the custodial teams at different schools are willing to work with.
Okay.
As far as how much recycling, because I've worked in several different schools and each one has been a little bit different.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with schools being different, but I think we should be pretty close, because it's really not fair that one school is, busting their butts, to recycle everything. And I think I read in another, well, I know I read somewhere in another energy conservation policy, it says that schools are going to get, incentive pay for how they, manage their energy. So, that just seems like if we're going to manage energy, we should be managing our other resources as well, and not penalize people for, because they choose not to recycle their milk cartons the same way somebody else does.
And Kevin just pointed out to me that the current situation, we have national shortages of everything. And so while these, as long as these are goals and not requirements, I think we can make it work.
Ms. Craybill, I would add in child nutrition, we are moving more and more based on cost and availability to, recyclable products and recycling. We do provide recycling opportunities at every school. Some schools, based on their choice and initiative, have taken it one step further. And if they do, that's fine. We work with them. But those schools that are doing, a lot of recycling and composting, that's a school initiative.
Okay, yeah. And I knew that. That's why I just wanted to make sure that our goals didn't say that everybody had to, that was part of their school initiatives.
Okay, so we want to finish up 6530.
I have
we good with
wording
deleting
changes.
numbers?
Yeah.
Sorry?
No, I'm sorry.
I was saying
Okay.
we want to delete number 6, correct?
That's what I thought I heard, yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
Mary,
we have
so
our request.
we'll go ahead and just delete number 6 on that one. Just make sure we're on the same page. Is there anything else we want to change on 6530? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Sold. All right. Moving on to, so we're going to move that one on. 6540, hazardous materials.
Okay, so yeah, I had comments on that one. In the second paragraph where it says the superintendent shall develop procedures and programs as necessary to address compliance, I would like to see in there the superintendent, in conjunction with or at the advice of the safety director, because I think that's, part of what a safety director's job is to manage the hazardous materials that are on all of our campuses. So that one, and we said that down in the fourth paragraph, the third paragraph where it says, principal, building level supervisor. I wanted to add safety director, wanted us to consider adding safety director in there as well.
Dr. Faust, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so then in number 1, I would like to see it say something more like procedures for purchasing, storing, handling, transporting, and disposing of hazardous material for all school district facilities, not just school facilities, must be developed and reviewed at least annually and communicated to the school district employees with the need to know, because just says that we address them in a reasonably safe manner. That is like so ambivalent that it's not even funny.
Mr. Anderson or Dr. Faust, what are your thoughts on that?
So I think Eddie can answer the one about the hazardous material. As far as the safety director, that's fine. Typically, that's where it would be understood in there. But of course, if you want to write it in there, that's fine also.
Well, thank you for that. Because I just think that if we don't specifically call that out and name that, then that easily can go by the wayside. And with that, and I just, yeah.
Would you consider the superintendent or designee?
Yeah, that's fine. But I just want to elevate the importance of school safety. And there's a couple other places in here that we are going to be talking about school safety. And if we are to the level of having a safety director, then we should at least be holding that person accountable for the job that we hired them to do. And I'm sure that's what Dr. Faust and actually, Ms. Barnum, because that's what, safety comes underneath her, purview right now. But I'm good with designee. I just want to make sure that we talk about safety and not as an afterthought, as a forethought and planned.
Okay. So we'll add in or designee in there on 6540.
No, so are we saying designee, not safety person?
I would just
I'm
think
really
that,
fine either way.
I would prefer designee, let's say, just say for instance, the position title changes, then we would still know it's the designee.
Right.
Okay.
Okay,
That's fine.
let's go with designee then. So we'll have that in that second paragraph, and then again
So
after the
What are your
number.
thoughts on,
Yeah, Ms. Craybill, could you repeat your recommendation for item number 1?
say it again?
Kevin just texted me and said he was having, y'all were having trouble hearing me. I don't know what's
Yeah,
going on.
you're a little low.
I think that Mr. Anderson asked on item number 1, Ms. Craybill, you made some recommended changes.
How is that? Is that better?
Yep, we can hear you fine now.
Great. Yes, Ms. Craybill, could you repeat your
I can hear you, but
recommendation?
now I'm breaking up all over. I'm hearing broken up stuff. Yes. Okay. So my recommendation was procedures for in front of what we already have. Procedures for purchasing, storing, handling, and transporting and disposing of hazardous material for all school district facilities must be developed, reviewed at least annually, and communicated to those district employees with the need to know. I just want to make sure that we know what that means, reasonably safe, addressing them in a reasonably safe manner. Doesn't have to be in policy. It should be in procedure. Does that make sense?
That does, and I'm fine with that. I like that change.
Okay,
Okay. I can type that up.
if you wouldn't mind, that'd be awesome.
And then, do you have a problem, Eddie? And a problem with, instead of saying school personnel, or school facilities, to put school district facilities, so that we cover all of our off-campus, off-school system, like the bus depot complex and the northern bus depot, and just any other buildings that we own and have employees in.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, well, I'll send those to Kim for inclusion.
All right, thank you. Moving on to 65, unless we hear anything else on that one, 6550 vandalism. Obviously, we don't want to deal with vandalism, but all too often, I think in schools, we do have to deal with vandalism, so.
Well, and then I had a comment there too, that willful destruction of school property equipment. I'm thinking, vandalism should be included in all of our district facilities. Like, suppose somebody goes over and starts breaking windows at the technology area, or in the purchasing warehouse, or trying to break in there. So shouldn't we include school district property? And then, well, the person who's in charge of a building, central office, is another one. Like, who's in charge of that building? Is that Dr. Faust? We would tell, he would be in charge of vandalism kind of stuff.
I think that when school property is used, it is understood to mean any property owned by the school district.
Okay.
I mean, you can certainly add it in there, but I think in my understanding, school property covers all of that.
Okay. And then what about in the second paragraph where it says, then the principal, because we don't have principals at 6410 or the bus or the technology complex.
Change to administrators.
Yeah, the building administrator or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be better for what I'm.
So do we want to? Are we wanting to change principal, or do we want to say principal or building administrator?
Principals and.
Okay. I think that's good too, because there are situations where the principal's off campus and the assistant principal's in charge of the school for a day or even longer. And otherwise they got to try to get the principal, and then the principal's got to try to get the superintendent. So I think that's good. Okay. So 6550, we're going to add that, the verbiage in there on the second paragraph. We'll move it on. Disposal of surplus property, 6560.
So we're okay with this. It does slightly change some of our procedures, but we don't disagree with the recommendations. And so we will adjust our procedures accordingly.
And so on the very last paragraph on page 1, where it says the superintendent shall provide a semi-annual report to the board. Does semi-annual mean twice a year or every other year?
I think it means twice a year. But
Okay, I'm sorry. I always.
But I'm not sure. The other discussion we had on that point, though, is that we normally do, it depends on the year, but 3 to 4 auctions in most years. Some years it's only 2. So if you prefer, we could provide the report, semi-annually or after the auction's complete. So whatever your preference is, we could do, or an annual report, whatever you need.
I mean, I'm fine with leaving it as semi-annual. I had a question on D. How often does that actually happen? We have a paragraph, and I mean, it's obviously happened at some point, but where somebody gives us something, we give it back to them.
We've had situations where people have offered to donate items to us that we could not support. I remember years ago, it's my example, and I need to let it go because it was probably 25 years ago, but there was some sort of scoreboard that was going to hang from the ceiling, and there was a safety issue. I can't remember or we didn't have the money to reinforce whatever we need to do. So I think there's also times when people wanted to donate technology that doesn't, if I'm reading this correctly, we have turned it down. So I'm not sure that we've given it back. It's more we have not accepted it. So not sure.
Well, that's what. Yeah, that was kind of where I was, because as I read that, it's like we've accepted it, and then we'd say, we really don't. Principal says we really don't need that, so then we try to give it back to them. And I was like,
I don't think that has happened. So I don't know about the proper language there. We could ask Ms. Stagner.
So I believe in another policy, you have requirement that either the superintendent or the board approve the acceptance of gifts and donations. Mm-hmm. If that process is followed and you determine that you should in fact accept the gift or donation, I would agree that it should be exceedingly rare that you would ever then give it back and reconvey it. So this seems like maybe a little bit excessive, but there's no problem with keeping it in there.
Okay.
I can't, in this particular, the way I'm reading it now, I don't know that we have ever done that, or there would be a situation where we did, unless it was possibly transferred from another governmental agency that we transferred back. That's the only thing I could, which is also allowed in the policy without this part being here. So.
Okay. Well, like I say,
if it's a vestige and there's no really good reason for keeping it, you could certainly remove that, since it's just something that's carried over from current policy.
What do you think, Ms. Craybill? Ms. Craybill, are you there?
My computer went out temporarily, so I got back on my phone. I missed the conversation, but I'm fine with the second part of that. The only thing I wanted to just make a comment on was we have in the past the parent support organizations have received donations of laptops, and then we had them scrubbed and for students to use if we didn't, because we didn't have enough devices or something for them to take home, and especially the kids with our that were economically challenged and didn't have computers. But I think that's probably going by the wayside too, because now with our one-to-one devices, we shouldn't have to we shouldn't have a need for, parent support organizations to go out and solicit computers. Do you remember when we did that, Dawn?
Yeah, that was many, many years ago.
That was many years ago. Yes.
Yeah, but I don't see the need for that anymore, because now we have a donation policy that we have. And so it says if, schools want to donate, it has to meet, or parents or anybody wants to donate, it has to meet a certain, specification. But yeah, with one-to-one, we don't need that anymore.
Okay. So did I hear that we're just that this one is no wording changes?
Well, we were just discussing, D, whether we even need that section or not. You can leave it.
I don't necessarily think that we need it, but if it covers us on something, then we can just use it. But whatever Deborah thinks.
I can't imagine this. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that I can't imagine a situation where we would need it, but the law does allow for it. So even if it wasn't in policy, it looks like it's covered in the law.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is really just setting out what is in the statute. So if the situation ever came up, you would look at the statutes and what applied. But there's, again, I don't know that it's always necessary to repeat what's already in statute, but if it is helpful as a resource or a point of reference, there's no harm in doing it.
Okay. All right. So we'll leave it alone. All right. So now we move on to the new policies. The first one is planning to address facility needs, 9,000. I don't have anything. Mr. Anderson, do you have anything on that?
We did not have any suggested changes on this.
Okay. Anyone else? Ms. Craybill?
I just was, when I was reading down there, when it says school staff, it's the second to the last paragraph. When it says school staff, students, and parents should be involved in considering the needs for new and renovated facilities. I know we don't want to put that in policy, but Eddie, what does that look like?
Well, we actually had some discussion about that, and it looks different for all the different projects. And River Lights is a unique example, and we have involved student, staff, parents. Pond Valley, where we're doing a replacement, we have that opportunity. I think the involvement is less in a new school that's not a replacement building. But we do take all of our long-range plans, to the board, and the community has the opportunity at a board meeting to speak about that. And we also, if we are presenting, a new project, those plans are also available for review here in this building as well as at the school. So I think it's fine that it's there. The degree of involvement may vary depending on the specific project.
Oh no, I think it's fine that it's there. I was just curious if this was kind of like the school system's version of when the city of Wilmington or the county has a town hall or a meeting to talk about roads. It's the same kind of thing, right? You just give basic information and just listen to input.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay. All right. Yeah, no, I'm fine with it. I'm good.
All right, moving that one on. We'll move on to 9010 site selection. Again, Mr. Anderson, have anything there?
I did, and let me. So it really is probably more a question for Deborah. The very last paragraph that was added.
I'm glad you pointed that out, Eddie. Again, that is a paragraph that just repeats language that's in the statute. And it's also talking about, it goes beyond really site selection into purchase or building. So again, I don't think it's necessary. I don't know that there's any harm in including it, but it just repeats what's in statute.
And
Well, on that paragraph, the one thing that came to my mind when I was reading it was Isaac Bear, that, would we be ever constructing our building on UNCW's property? That's what jumped out at me when I read that.
right, and that's are we not able to construct school buildings on property that is leased?
There are some special circumstances for operational leases and for those, agreements with the county, for example, regarding the sales tax and that sort of thing. So again, I don't know that you need to get into that level of detail in this policy when this is talking about site selection. And if you have a specific question about a particular site and whether or not construction can occur, that's really going to be getting much more into the weeds and discussion with the attorney and the district. And so I don't know that you need to have it here.
Yeah, I would recommend that paragraph be deleted.
Okay. And I'm fine with that. Ms. Grable, you agree with that?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, we'll delete that paragraph, move 9010 on with the 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph deleted, the part in red. Okay, next we have facility design 9020. Mr. Anderson, why don't you take the lead again, sir?
Let's see here. In the very first paragraph, we were recommending in the last sentence, school buildings also be planned to the extent feasible. We would strike maximum and just say for use by the community.
Okay, fine with that. Ms. Grable, you good with that?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay.
In the second paragraph, where McKenna had some recommendations, it starts as well as all local codes, ordinances, and guidelines. We would strike including the city-county joint low impact development guidance manual. I don't know why that is specifically pointed out. It's part of the codes, ordinances, and guidelines.
Okay.
And this came from our old policy, so who knows what the heck was going on at the time we wrote that policy was written.
And then in that same paragraph, the sentence that starts, such specifications must include a description of activities expected to take place in the building. We would then strike the school's curriculum, but we're going to add that back into number 4. I think it's more appropriate that number 4 read the equipment needs and equipment space requirements in relation to the school's curriculum and other facility elements. We're really looking at the space and how best to enhance and implement the curriculum.
And with that, Ms. Grable, you also? Ms. Grable, you good with that? We'll lose you again?
Yep, I'm good with those.
Okay.
Because I had the question came up, and then again, like that in the 1, 2, 3 paragraph, that last sentence was the same thing about
having a meeting with parents to
Okay.
for the design of the building. That's, I like that.
Anything else, Mr. Anderson?
Okay.
Yes. In the next paragraph, the last sentence, it's talking about professional services and design. The very last sentence, the superintendent should work to involve school staff, parents, and students. We would add when feasible. It's not always.
Okay. So why would we put that when feasible there, but not put when feasible in the policy that we just looked at for renovations?
I think that we do involve, because it is a varying level. There are specific projects where, we have less involvement, if it's a new school and not a replacement school. So we were just adding when feasible. Or to the extent, or maybe a better word would be to the extent feasible.
So I'm still unclear as to why you couldn't have a forum, to describe to show the layout of the building, because I know that there are rules. We've had now there's guidelines that you have to go by, because I've sat on those committees before where you just basically just tell us this is what we have to do, and we're going to make it look really good around what we have to do.
Yeah, and that's really, we're trying to make this consistent with the other policy, and I think maybe perhaps when should be replaced to the extent feasible. Just recognizing that there's going to be a varying degree of involvement from staff, parents, and students on particular projects.
Okay. And that wouldn't be the case in a renovation, like, that. I just want us to be consistent, because I don't want a parent, or a community member or a staff member to say, hey, look, I worked at this school before and I got input when we renovated it, but how come, if I'm actually, that's not even true, because there won't be anybody there. So you can't even use the staff, perspective on that.
And that's exactly why we want to say, to the extent feasible, because a renovation project is a great example of when we have a lot of, input and involvement.
Yeah. Okay. No, I'm good with that. I understand now.
All right. So moving on, 9020.
Let's one more.
Sorry. Go ahead.
The last sentence of the last paragraph, it said the board must give final approval of facility plans before any money may be spent on new buildings or renovations. This is just a point of clarification. Ms. Stagner, when we have renovation projects that large projects that require board approval, we're going to the board for approval of schematics. We don't carry our construction documents back to the board. So, is that sufficient for final approval, or should we be going back? I mean, with construction documents, that would be hard to present.
So you're talking about approval of the plans, not approval of the, are you talking about buildings for which board approval of the contract is required, or this is just talking about the planning?
This is talking about board approval of the, of the facility plans on projects that require board approval of the contract.
Yeah, right.
And I guess in terms of facility plans, we've always gone back to the board with a schematic design development level. And, the question was, is that sufficient for final approval?
And the construction documents would be the more detailed, materials and things like that.
Right.
I think that it has been approved by, and it also it requires approval by the state board.
Right, and the state board, we do submit all plans to DPI. I think the state board has authorized them to review, and they actually issue a certificate of review that we obtain prior to the board awarding contracts.
So, my interpretation would be that would be sufficient. Those plans would be sufficient for the board to approve.
Okay. I thought so too. I just wanted that clarification. I think the more detailed construction documents are a bit much. And now I will say too that if a significant change was made after the board approved schematic design documents, we would certainly take that back to the board.
So Eddie, are you recommending that we strike the last sentence?
No, I'm fine with that. I just wanted a clarification that that we're implementing that correctly.
Okay.
And those are all the comments we had.
All right, so we'll move 9020 on, and we'll move on to facility construction 9030. Mr. Anderson, I think you're going to be leading most of the discussion throughout this section. Go ahead, if you want to have anything to add to 9030.
We do have the very first sentence, or the last sentence in the first paragraph. I just really needed clarification. I wasn't sure what that meant.
I had the same question because it's the same sentence that is in the second section for the A. It's the second sentence in section A. It's just repeated there, and I'm not sure why it's necessary to repeat it, or where, whether it should go, which place it should go.
I just kind of took that to mean that when McKenna was looking at our old policy, she brought that over and not paying attention that it was, even though it's word for word, yet it only needs to be in one place.
So can we strike the last sentence of the first paragraph?
It kind of makes more sense to me to be there and not in the quality of construction. It just says we will not accept substandard construction. Because it kind of does lead itself.
Yeah, it kind of leads itself into there that if we're not going to do it, we're not going to do it not near as good as it needs to be done because of funding. So we'd rather put it off and do it right.
Yeah, I kind of like it in A.
Okay, I'm fine.
So we'll strike it in the red on the top then. Anything else, Mr. Anderson, for this one?
Item C, change orders requiring board approval.
Yes, sir.
So where is it? I'm trying to find it. There's here it is. So in the second to the last sentence, well, no, we report annually on change orders, and that goes to the board every January. This is asking for monthly.
Yeah, I thought that was a bit excessive myself.
Okay, here it is. It's in B, at the very top of the, of page 2. I would recommend replacing monthly with annually. That's what we've been doing, and I don't think we really have enough work or projects going on that would require monthly.
Where are you again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I got lost on where you said you were. I was reading someplace else and
Yeah.
agreeing with you.
I
You
couldn't
said-
find it. So if, look at the very top of page 2.
Okay.
Okay, yeah,
Um,
your description.
Well, yours is different than mine. Could you scroll up to maybe page 1?
I think it's it's big B, number 1, little b, right?
Okay.
And paragraph 2 of little b.
Yes.
Yes.
Monthly, yeah, I see it there. So you're saying yearly
Yeah,
instead of.
it's in the very last sentence there, on that page. We would just recommend replacing monthly to an annual basis.
Annually.
And I don't, Ms. Stagner, I do believe that the general statute says periodic. It doesn't specify. And so that's just how we've complied with it.
Yeah, I'll take a quick look. I think you're right. I'll double check that.
And Eddie, I don't recall ever hearing the, and maybe I just have glazed over that part where in that first paragraph or that first sentence of the paragraph, the superintendent shall report to the board all change orders that were approved by the superintendent, including those that do not impact the contract amount. I mean, is that a state requirement also? Because I don't necessarily recall hearing about change orders.
Well, we do, in January, we'll take 2 reports to the board each year. And one of those is a change order report. So any contract that has been approved by the board, we'll report on change orders. And some of those, it could be a $0 amount. It could be a change order increasing or decreasing the term of the contract, or it could be, a substitution of materials that didn't impact cost. But,
Okay.
Yeah, any change order, because the superintendent has the authority to approve change orders under 300,000. So any change orders that were within his approval authority are reported to the board annually.
Okay.
All right, so go
We
ahead.
don't have any other comments.
I
Okay,
have, if I might, policy 6420, we went back and forth quite a bit about the language that has been added here for contracts that were, it originally said approved by the board, any change order that causes the cumulative amount to increase by 25%. And that language was changed to be for all contracts in excess of $300,000, any change order that causes the cumulative amount to increase by 25%. I think Mary Hazel was involved in that discussion. And so I'm wondering if the same change should be made here to mirror that language in policy 6420, and then whether it should go, that whole section should go under item 2, because it's about contracts in excess of $300,000.
So Deborah, if I'm hearing you correctly, are you recommending in its B1C, all the red
Yes.
in there where it says 25%? Okay, yeah, I was thinking about that as well. It didn't match 6420. Another policy we just went through referenced 6420, and we really haven't even approved 6420 yet. It's only been on for first reading.
And they were both combined in the previous policy. I don't think this was separate, but the language is coming from the same current policy. So I would recommend they be the same.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think it does make sense to move item C under item 2.
That would be, if we had A being the first paragraph, then it would be B underneath 2.
No, it's letter C. It's B1C
Right,
paragraph.
but we're moving
into
it.
B2.
Right, so-
It may not need to be actually set out and numbered. It may just need to be merged in. I'll have
Right.
to read that and see what makes the most sense.
Okay, that sounds good. So we'll just move it down to 2 then. Okay, without a B. Anything else from anyone? If not, we will move 9030 with the changes on. All right, good. Next we have 9110. Use and selection of architects, engineers, surveyors, and construction managers at risk. Mr. Anderson, anything?
Yes, I'm trying to find it. There's a reference to a PO being issued, and I don't think in the new software. I think we had some discussion about that in the purchasing policies, and probably need to change this to be consistent. So in item C, contract format, in the middle of the paragraph, it says contracts will be supported by a purchase order to encumber funds.
What's your question about that?
Well, Mary Hazel, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're not issuing a purchase order for those contracts. It's just a contract.
We changed the language to, we are, it's the same thing as with the other policy. I'm just looking for how we changed it to, we're encumbering it with a contract. And our new system allows us to do that for contracts without issuing a separate purchase order. But I can't find the language, but I will find it.
And which policy is that? To match 6420?
I think so, but that's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Get rid of the purchase order. While she looks that up, Mr. Anderson, do you have anything else on 9110?
No, I do not.
Okay.
While she's looking that up before we move on, did anybody else have 9100 in their packet?
I think that was already provided. McKenna's
Okay.
note said it was already provided so that she wasn't sending it again.
Okay, gotcha. That's what I was just making sure that we didn't have to reference it, but I guess 6401 is the one where we reviewed it.
Correct.
Okay.
I apologize. I cannot, I'm looking at the 6420 we took on the 5th to the board, and I know we had that language in there. I just can't find it. So I can get the language to Deborah once I find it. I just don't remember where it was in the policy.
Okay. We can just mark that one down to move along with the appropriate wording.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll do that. All right, 9115, pre-qualification bidders for construction projects. Mr. Anderson?
We do not have any, no comments or recommended changes on 9115.
So
Gravely,
I had a couple, Eddie, which you will probably guess what they might be. But but for the first one is when we're talking about the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, are we taking into account that the lowest responsive and responsible bidder may be undercutting other people, and you have another way to evaluate that?
Well, responsible and responsive, is how we have to evaluate the bids. Responsive typically refers to, the bid. Was it responsive to all of the requests? Was it complete and accurate? Were there any omissions? Was it received in a timely manner? And then responsible typically refers to the qualifications. We may have some language that requires a bidder to have experience on particular types of projects, or if they, we can also consider, their track record. Were they late? Were they assessed liquidated damages, or did we have other issues with that bidder on another project?
Okay. So another all right, so comment on, it's letter B, number 2, at the last sentence where it's talking about the pre-application form will require information, and it lists all the things. And under other, in the last kind of words say, and other objective criteria rationally related to the contract to be awarded. Can we put in there right before the other, their safety incident rates, so that we know that we're getting a contractor that doesn't hurt people and have drama where we have to talk about that? Because I know that when our company, applies for jobs, we always have to include our incident rate, and if we've had any major workers' compensation claims. So are we not interested in that at the school district, whether we're hiring a safe contractor or not?
We are. That is just not spelled out in the pre-qualification application.
Because to me, that would be somebody that I would not qualify to be a bidder if they had a high incident rate.
I'm fine with adding that.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's go ahead
So
and add that.
let's put it after work performed by the firm, safety incident rates, and then other objective criteria.
Ms. Crandall, is that a term that is a standard industry defined term? I'm not familiar with
It is.
safety incident rate.
I can look up the actual term that we use, but it's an incident rate. It's the number of injuries you have per 100,000 man hours that are worked, and that is a standard comparison tool if you use an incident rate.
And I guess I'm just wondering if every potential bidder would have that already calculated. Would that be something that they are required to provide, for example, to the government for some kind of auditing, or what? I just wouldn't want, I think it's a great idea. I just want to be sure that everyone is understanding apples to apples and what the term means, and what, if it's something that a small company has to provide or would have to go out and recreate, what that burden might be. So just trying to understand.
If you have more than 10 employees, then you have to report this number to the federal government. if you don't have more than 10 employees, you do not have to report it, but that doesn't keep you, that doesn't exclude you from having to work, provide evidence should OSHA want to come and look at that. So it's really not that much of a burden, because you're just all you do is go to your payroll and look at your number of hours, and then you look at in your HR department to see, or the owner, and to see how many injuries you have. So it's not hard. I mean, it's not a huge burden to calculate.
I'm just not familiar with that terms. Thanks for that explanation.
Well, I mean, I'll look it up and send it to you just so you can understand better, to make sure, because the terminology just, changes from time to time. But incident rate is fairly standard.
Okay. Anything else on 9115?
So along the same lines, if you go into C number 6, firms shall also demonstrate, this is the last sentence, firms shall also demonstrate an acceptable safety history for construction projects. I mean, that speaks right back to what I just said about your incident rate. But Eddie, are we not requiring that companies have a written safety plan before we hire them? Because they are required to submit a site safety plan for any construction project. So I would assume that we would require them to submit a written safety plan.
They would submit that prior to construction, but this is for CM at risk. So these firms would be brought on in the design process.
So maybe I'm not understanding properly, but it doesn't say in letter C, the application, that it's for the CM at risk. It says it for all companies. I mean, I thought that the OSHA standard for general construction says that you have to have a written safety plan, but you can't do a safety plan until you get awarded it. But if they don't even have a policy that talks about safety, then they probably are going to be pretty derelict on their responsibilities for a site safety plan.
Yeah, this is pre-qualification of bidders. And so we're only pre-qualifying construction manager at risk.
Okay. But, and does construction managers at risk, what does that mean, that they're at risk of not doing well?
No, so construction management at risk is it's a delivery method that is available to us, where we typically use that on very complex projects, Roland Grice, Myrtle Grove, Trask, where we were implementing very large construction projects on occupied and school sites. So this gives us the advantage of having the construction manager brought on board to perform design and pre-construction services. So they're a part of the design process. And then the at-risk portion of it comes in is, instead of bidding the project prior to construction, we will establish a guaranteed maximum price, and then they have to complete that within that guaranteed price.
And we would assume that they would do that in a safe way. So if they're going to have to hustle through something and perhaps not have the appropriate equipment, then just to meet the price. I'm just trying to get at, especially complex projects, we would want to make sure that company has an adequate safety plan. I mean, a safety program.
Yes.
We don't write their plan. We just want to make sure they have one.
Right. And I think that's why we're asking at the very beginning, that they demonstrate acceptable safety history, and, adding the safety incident rate is a good recommendation as well. But at the time we are hiring them, the scope of work and a schedule hasn't been defined. So they can't prepare or write a specific safety plan for that project.
No, and that's, so I'm using the wrong word. Not a safety plan, that comes after we actually have the work going. I was looking at just making sure these companies have a written safety program. That means that they even know how to follow all the rules. Because I mean, I've been to schools and I'm by schools where some of our contractors just aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I always just called Dave Spencer, and said, hey, look, you've got a guy out here, I'm not going to say anything to him because it's not my job, but they're not wearing their hard hats, or they're in a ditch that's not been shored. So I guess that's part of the job of your construction manager, from New Hanover County Schools.
Well, it's part of the job of the CM at risk contractor as well to make sure that the subs are following the safety procedures.
Right.
I think what you're asking for is covered in, that they shall demonstrate an acceptable safety history.
And then so you will define in procedure what acceptable safety history means. That if I have an incident rate of 9, then we're not going to hire them. But if I have an incident rate of less than 2, then I might hire them. So you'll define that in procedure.
Well, we will compare that. These are when they're submitting their pre-qualification package. That's one of the criteria that we will use in evaluating these submittals, and placing one firm higher or lower above the other.
Okay. I just have a problem with that. Safety is not one of the equal things that we're looking at. But if that's what we want to do, the rest of the people want to do, then that's what we send forward.
Well, how would you like to change it, Ms. Craybill?
I did. I said how I wanted to change it. And so that's, and one of the ones we put in, for the safety incident rate, as one of our criteria. Mm-hmm. And I'm was just thinking that one of our other, that I guess demonstrating a safety history will be fine. And then you'll just have to define what that is in procedures, and it won't be a policy. And then part of you will have to, like, what are you going to do if they don't have a written safety program?
What if we said firms shall also demonstrate an acceptable safety history in company policy?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm fine with adding that.
Okay. All right. That gets what I'm trying to get. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Very good. So we'll move 9115 on with those changes, and we move on to 9120, bidding for construction work.
Oh, can I ask one question too, Eddie? What is the difference in two of your, in other policies we talk about in letter 3D3, where it says within 7 business days? What is the difference between a business day and a weekday?
Business days are Monday through Friday.
And what's a weekday? Not Monday through Friday?
Business day would not include any type of holiday during the week.
Gotcha. Okay.
Good.
Mr. Wildebohr, before you go on, I did find the answers to the questions, and I don't know if it'll affect other policies, but I just wanted to mention that the language that we were looking for, and the reason I couldn't find it, it was in a policy we put on hold for purchase of services, 6450, which didn't come back today. I'm not sure why not, but we probably need to bring it back at the next meeting. But the language was supported by a purchase order or encumbrance contract. That's the language we want to add in that previous contract that Eddie mentioned. And that policy also, the reason we put it on hold, there was a discussion about RFP levels. So, we can bring that back to the next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah,
we were talking about 9110, so we want to add that into that one.
No, it was, 9110. Yes.
9110. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Thank you.
I left that one marked. Okay.
And there were 3 of those policies, Mary Hazel, that we sent back to look at and didn't resurface this time. I just assumed it was because they weren't done.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened, but it's probably my fault, but I will look to see what the other 2 were.
I have them right
Thank
here.
you very
Hold on.
much.
I can tell you which ones they were. It was It was in our minutes that we went through. That's how, when I was trying to look through all these, it was 6430, 6450, 6510, 6520, 6521. We had a whole bunch of them that we held back.
Some of those came up. So I'll research it and bring it back.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, thank
All
you.
right.
Okay. All right, we ready to move on to 9120, bidding for construction work. Mr. Anderson, anything?
I think it's 9115, Pete. Didn't we get, oh, never mind, sorry.
We just finished that one, yeah.
Oh,
Just
yeah,
move
sorry,
that
sorry. I put it in the wrong pile.
one. Not a problem, not a problem. 9120, Mr. Anderson.
So under item F, the very last paragraph, just clarification, Mary Hazel, the report that you will be providing to the board, I think this was also added to one of the purchasing contract or policies. That would include construction, correct?
Can you speak just a little louder? I'm having trouble hearing you.
I'm sorry. The in item F, the last paragraph reads, at least monthly, the superintendent shall report to the board all contracts approved by the superintendent or designee under this policy that exceed, and we inserted $100,000. That was a change made in the purchasing contract, and or purchasing policy. I just want to make sure that these construction contracts will be included in the report that you're doing, and it's not a separate report.
They would be included. And unless you felt a need for them to be separate.
I think.
Yeah, some of these duplicate, so I'm not sure the reason why.
Yeah, and so if that's added in the purchasing, can we just strike that last paragraph?
Yeah, because it says in McKenna's notes that last sentence is optional. But if we keep it, we have to put a dollar amount in. And the policy I'm looking at doesn't have a dollar amount. It has a line.
Well,
Yeah, mine too.
that same paragraph was added to a purchasing policy, and the dollar amount was established at $100,000. And since purchasing will be doing that report, I'd like to strike it from, the bidding for construction policy.
It would include all. So you would not need to separate it here.
Okay.
Okay, yes, I'm good with that, striking that out.
The last paragraph of F then, or last, sentence. Okay, absolutely. Anything else on 9120? All right, if not, we'll move that on. Mark that.
Oh,
moved
there
up.
was one. Let me find it. So under E, approvals, the second paragraph, any construction or repair contract that involves expenditures of at least $300,000 or extends into the next fiscal year. We haven't done that for construction repair contracts because they're funded out of Fund 4 capital.
Well, I think that they had already been approved. Fund 4 carries over. So the way I'd always determined that they would automatically continue. But we can look at the language.
So,
but not everything in repair. I mean, sometimes you do repair out of capital, out of operating funds, in your maintenance account, and it would have to follow this.
okay.
You're reading faster than me. I need to catch up.
Mhm.
Because the extends into the next year is for, as I understand it, compliance with the budget law that doesn't affect capital outlay. That it's for the single year budgets.
Okay.
But Deborah, can you help us with this, or maybe we need to dig a little deeper and make sure I'm right?
So, this looks like language that McKenna added into, I don't know if she thought she needed to be consistent with your other policies, and maybe that's why she added that.
Right. And we very much would love, especially, I know Dawn is on the call, and sometimes she has small projects that might run April to August. And it would be much easier if they fall below these limits to not have to take them to the board when they're so small. But that has been our understanding of the current policy, and we thought it was based in law, but we could research it.
Well, in the correlation table, McKenna did say that she modified section G to include information from our old policy 50/50. So all the stuff in red, she just brought over.
I will take another look at that. I don't know that it is required for this section, but I will double check.
So then do we
So
want
should
to
we?
hold on this one? And why don't we also move that to,
Well,
you're breaking up real bad.
in policy till.
Ms. Grable, would you repeat? Because you're breaking up real bad. At least I can't hear you.
Tell us the words.
Ms. Grable, would you repeat that? Because you broke up real bad. I couldn't understand it.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm just saying that McKenna said that she brought a lot of stuff over from policy 50/50. So I was just asking, is it enough information for us to research that we have to hold on to it? Or is that something, because Deborah's got a huge long list of things to modify for us for the next meeting. For the November meeting for first reading.
So if you all say you don't want that language unless it's legally required, then I'll double check. If it's not legally required, we can strike it out. Would that be satisfactory?
It is in the language going on that's already gone for first reading. So we'll need to research for that other policy as well.
So what does that mean? Hold on to it?
Why don't we just hold on to it and we'll make sure we get it right instead of pushing it on and finding out that it's not right.
While we're on this one, under section A, the second paragraph, the board prohibits discrimination against any person or business. In other policies where you were talking about discrimination, you added gender identity, and I just want to raise that and see if this is something the board wanted to be consistent with and use the same language, or leave it in this one.
I think we should be consistent. Especially if that's what statute is going towards.
All right, so we're gonna hold on to 9120. Ma'am?
So are we holding on to it? We hold, and what was your comment? What was your thoughts on what Deborah just said about adding gender in types of discrimination?
I think we need to be consistent, so.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. But
So
we'll hold
are we holding 6120? I mean 9120?
That's what I always said, but.
Okay, all right.
Okay, let's move on to 9125, participation by minority businesses.
We did not have any comments.
Mary Hazel, anything? Do you have anything, Mary Hazel?
Sorry, I was muted. Sorry, no changes.
Yeah, the only thing I was asking about was when we were talking about in letter A, the goal of 10%. In one area, it looks like it's added in one area, it wasn't added in, like in the 1, 2, 3, 4th line, the verifiable goal of 10 is not in red, it's in black. Was that just because we forgot to track there?
So the second place it talks about the board is adopting the state's aspirational verifiable goal. So that's the state's goal. And the other one is the first one is for the board to set its own goal.
Okay, I'm good. Thanks.
All right, anything else for 9125? If not, we'll move that on for first reading. And move on to 9130. Supervision of construction contracts.
We do not have any comments on this one either.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone?
So I had one comment there when we're talking about in the second sentence, the superintendent or designee shall oversee all projects to ensure quality control and compliance. Can we put quality control, job site safety? And not lump safety into applicable laws and regulations?
Well, my only concern with that is that legally the contractor is responsible for safety. We can certainly point things out, but that I wouldn't want to make the school system as the owner responsible for contractor safety.
No, but if there's an injury or an illness or major property damage while it's on our site, it's still our people are at risk for that too. I'm not saying that we supervise it, because they have to supervise it because that's what the law says, and to keep co-employership out of that. But I would think that our project managers would be looking at safety just like they're looking at quality control, to make sure and have a word with the contractor if applicable safety stuff is not being followed.
But the designee does not oversee to ensure safety. That's the responsibility of the contractor.
And it's not the responsibility of the contractor to oversee its own quality control?
It is.
Yeah, I had some concern about that language in the use of the word ensure generally, because again, that would seem to shift the burden to the superintendent and designee to do things that the contractor is responsible for. And so I sort of had a question about using the word ensure at all. And again, the last paragraph has the same issue, to ensure that the work was done as designed. If you inspect it and conclude that the work was done as designed and a problem comes up later, I think that that's problematic.
I guess I'm with you on that one too, Deborah. Just it's not our job to do the insuring, but we're the ones, we're the client, so it is our job to make sure that work is done to our specifications. And if we don't write it if we don't put it in the contract as part of the safety, then we don't have anything to stand on. If we don't put quality control in our contract, then we don't have anything to come back and and grieve about. So maybe we just need to, because it just says inspection will be conducted to ensure the work was done as designed. So maybe we just change the wording. Because if one of our people sees something going wrong, it's our person's responsibility to stop and point it out to the contractor until they get it right.
Right. Yeah.
Not for us to fix it; they have to fix it.
Correct, and I agree with you. Maybe changing the word ensure, but we don't, as the owner, we don't get involved in means and methods. We do utilize consultants. The design team is responsible for ensuring the work is done as designed. They actually have to provide us at the end of the project a sealed certification that the work was completed per plans and specifications. And I think that relationship is important. I don't want to take on more responsibility as the owner, then we have to. Yeah, honestly, the second sentence, I would strike that out altogether.
And so why was that one even put in there? She brought it over from our old policy. Because this policy is just for, it says in her notes, to establish accountability for supervising construction projects. So the owner has to know what is going on with its contractor and the subs. They don't have to manage it, but just because they're not responsible for the day-to-day doesn't mean that they're not ultimately responsible for what is happening on their site.
And the first sentence says that the superintendent or designee is responsible for monitoring construction contracts with the architect and or engineer and all contractors. So, I mean, that seems to establish a high level oversight. And
right.
I'm not sure that the second sentence adds anything other than ambiguity and shifting of responsibility.
Yeah, I would agree with Eddie that if it's not required by law, then let's take it out.
Okay, the second sentence. I'm on mute. No, I'm not. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Craybill, because I did not catch that.
It's all right. I know you guys do a good job. It's just a matter of that's what safety people do. You're good. So if we just strike out that comment, then we should be good to go.
Okay. All right, we'll move 9130 on for first reading. And with that deletion, on to 9200, care and maintenance of facilities. I don't think I had anything on there. Mr. Anderson?
We did not have any comments.
Ms. Craybill?
Yeah, my only comment on there was about, well, I had two comments. One was about, school property, and Deborah explained that school does not necessarily mean, school building. It means all of school property. So when I'm looking at B, to that point where it says, principals must inspect their school buildings, principals shall notify the immediately. But what about the non-school buildings? Should we change that to principals and building administrators or something along those lines?
That sounds like it makes a lot of sense to me.
Is that the best place to put it?
I think so.
Okay.
We could say principals and building administrators must inspect and take out school, just buildings.
Yeah, their buildings, right. And then where it says, and again, principals shall notify, and then maybe just put, and they shall notify. Or repeat the same thing, principals and or building administrators. Whichever reads better.
I think the last sentence is fine, leaving, his or her supervisor or principal. So
no, I think we have to change it there, because if I work in the bus depot, then I should know. I'm not going to notify I guess I notify my supervisor. Okay, never mind.
Supervisor, yeah. Yep.
Okay. All right. So Eddie, here in this one, care and maintenance of facilities, is this where the board should make some sort of statement that requires that we have a PM program with a work order system that, because if people report, or is that more procedure? When people report safety hazards, that we have a work order system to fix them? I know we do, but is this a policy kind of thing, or is that more procedure?
More procedure. You know,
So, go ahead.
we're asking the principal or building administrator to inspect and then report.
But we don't have anything in there to say what we do, that there's any expectation that once it's reported that it's fixed in a timely manner or taken out of service. All we've said is we're gonna put up proper signs. You know, well, a sign's not gonna necessarily protect anybody from doing anything, and there's only so much good a sign can do when you have like a hole in the floor, or you have an electrical outlet that's exposed.
Right.
Because it says the maintenance department shall make reasonable efforts to maintain the facilities in good condition and to make needed repairs. I mean, reasonable efforts to make, you know, repairs on safety concerns. That doesn't, I don't like that wording at all. Is there any wording that we can just refer to? Like, I mean, I know it's procedural on how you do it, but if we didn't say that you had to do it, this is hypothetical, would you do it?
Now I was looking to see if, you know, should we say the maintenance department shall immediately eliminate any potential safety hazard, comma, make reasonable efforts to maintain the facility in good condition and to make needed repairs. So,
Yeah, and I would hate to say that go ahead.
I think, you know, I think to your point, we might not make the repairs immediately.
Right.
But we will eliminate the potential hazard. I mean, we could close off an area. There's, I mean,
right.
Depending on what it is. I'm fine with adding that.
Okay. So where do you want to write that so that Deborah can include it?
So how does this sound? The maintenance department shall immediately address any potential safety hazards, comma.
Okay. And shall make reasonable efforts to maintain the facilities in good conditions.
Right.
Because you don't want to take that out, because I mean that's part of that's what maintenance says. Yeah.
Yeah, I would, yeah, just insert, I'm just inserting that.
Okay.
The entire sentence would read, the maintenance department shall immediately address any potential safety hazard, comma, make reasonable efforts to maintain the facility in good condition and to make needed repairs.
Correct. Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
All righty. So 9200 is ready to move on.
Yes.
Pest management, 9205. We're on the last column of my group. Yes, sir.
And now we get to the fun stuff. I only had, well, I thought I had 2 comments. Yeah, I do. So in A, the very last paragraph, McKenna added, when a decision is made to use pesticides, school personnel shall. We wanted to insert licensed school personnel.
Oh, thank you, because that was my question. Who gets to be the one that makes this decision? Right.
Yeah, they're required to have a license.
Okay.
And then the other one, under item C, first paragraph, the last sentence, notice of non-scheduled pesticide use should be made at least, and change that to 96 instead of 72 hours in advance.
And can we say in the sentence, like right before that, that the principal or designee shall notify building staff? Because I right there, I think school staff really implies this a school and not a New Hanover County School District building. Does that make, is that overkill, or are we going to still go with school as implied?
This particular requirement comes from statute, and it is applicable, and Eddie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this applies only to schools, so because of the concern around students' safety with pesticides. So it certainly doesn't prevent you, like, for example, the statute requires at least 72 hours notice. Sounds like you all have been going above and beyond that and giving 96 hours notice. So you can give more protection or go with stricter requirements than the statute has. But that's why it's referring to students and parents and such.
Well, I'm just thinking that we certainly want to protect all of our employees, because there might be an employee who is allergic or is outside eating lunch, and we've got pesticides that just got sprayed on the picnic table, by accident. But if that's what the statute said, I mean, then
again, you can expand that requirement if that's something that is important to the board, to make it broader, make the application broader.
So I think you're just asking, correct me if I'm wrong, but it would say additionally, the principal or designee shall annually notify school building staff.
I would just say building staff.
Or building.
But if we have to say school to meet the law, then yeah. I guess I'm just being overreactive to thinking about the adults that work in our facilities, in addition to the children that work in our facilities. I mean, that go to our schools.
Would you want to say the principal, building administrator, or designee shall annually notify school and building staff? I mean, is that what you're?
Yes, that's what I was trying to get to. Yes.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay.
Because everybody's important.
They all are.
So in that same paragraph, Eddie, is there, when it says that they have to be notified, do we want to say anything about that? And they have the right to review the SDS of the pesticide being used?
I mean, they certainly have that right. I don't know if you want to put that in here or not, but it's
okay. We don't have to put it in as long as you have it available if somebody knows their right, because most people don't know their right to do that.
Yeah, we maintain those at the school and on a district level.
Okay, because it really only applies, that one really only applies to employees. So, all right, that's fine.
All right. Anything else for 9205? If not, we'll move on with the changes. 9210, care and maintenance of grounds and outdoor equipment. Mr. Anderson?
Pull that one up. No comments.
Comments. Anyone else?
On paragraph number 3, where it says that we have to alert, inspect for hazards on a regular basis, is that just what's required by law? Because is it monthly, quarterly? What's regular? Because what's regular to one principal may not be regular to another principal.
I think it also matters if there's a pre-K on
Right.
site, because the pre-K has additional rules and regulations.
Yeah, and there is says regular, but our procedure is daily. They do a walk of the grounds and playground.
Every principal at every elementary school does that?
No,
Or
actually,
not principal, every custodian or some designated person does that every day?
yes. So it's probably should be the principal or designee.
Yeah. And is that logged somewhere, Eddie? Like you see in bathrooms when you go in there, this was checked like every hour?
It is.
Okay,
And it's audited.
okay.
Okay, it's good to know.
All right, well, then I can go with that on a regular basis as long as we have it logged.
Okay, and with the change to add or designee.
Yes.
For me. Okay. So 9210, we'll move on. We see the end here. Only a few
Yes,
more.
almost done.
I think we have one that'll take quite a lot of time. So
Yes, it will.
9220, security of facilities. Mr. Anderson, or
We did not have any comments on this.
Okay, so I did.
Ms.
when
Crable, do you
we're-
have anything?
Yeah, on safety and security. All right, so number 2, does security personnel, that does not, or does that refer to SROs and Wilmington Police, or does that refer to private security companies that we might hire?
I don't think that that's not referring to SROs.
Or the police?
Correct. Yeah, we do have some private security firms under contract. We don't have, other than, Glenn, any security personnel positions.
Okay, so I guess what I'm getting there is this where we might hire people to come and help us enforce safety procedures at our board meetings? Since we're talking about the board center is a school system building.
Yeah, I think so. It could be. We've had
Okay.
events, where we had hired private security firms for, metal detection as well.
Okay, so would that be like a just a contract and not an MOU like we have with the law enforcement?
Right, it would be a contract because we only contract for that specific event.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. So in paragraph 3, when we're talking about the district, emergency operations plans, you have down here in where it says we have to make modifications to doors or windows. Do the entranceways, the portals, does that include doors and windows? Is that included with doors? It seems to me it's a little bit more specific than just regular old doors.
You're in paragraph 3?
I'm in number 3, it's number 3 of paragraph 1. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines down. Like it's like straight in the middle. When the school system makes substantial facility modifications, such as the addition of new facilities or modifications to doors or windows.
Yeah, I think what they're getting at there is if we were to put, say, safety film on the windows, or but this is talking about substantial facility modifications that would require an update to our schematic designs or schematic diagrams that we provide law enforcement. So I think they would, what it's saying here is they would want to know if we did something to reinforce doors or windows. So we will definitely update these schematic diagrams each time we add secure vestibules and provide that to them.
Okay, so that's what but we don't need to write that because it was specific to doors or windows. And I didn't know if we wanted the vestibules to be included specifically or not.
Well, I think, again, that gives examples. It says such as the addition of new
Okay.
facilities. So again,
Okay.
the statute requires you to provide certain information to law enforcement. And this is an example of the kinds of things that you would need to update them about.
Okay. So moving on to number 4, when it says principals shall make reasonable efforts to secure buildings and other valuable property, do we want to add their principals and building administrators to secure their buildings and valuable property?
I think so.
Okay. Okay, number 6, where it says principals are encouraged to involve teachers, other school staff, the law enforcement in identifying security needs. So what about some schools will encourage this and some schools won't? Would that lead us to believe that we somehow care more about one school cares more about safety than another school cares? Can we just change that wording somehow?
I mean, principals and building administrators shall.
Yeah, because to what extent is one, but I think encouraged is just too, I don't feel like it. But is shall, too much, or, I mean, even though I think it's not too much, I think they should, but.
Because I believe if you put in there, if you change it to administrators, shall involve teachers, what if you don't have any updates or security needs? And there it's saying that they shall. So are you saying that I'm supposed to find some security every time, or?
No. I'm not saying that we have to find it. It's just you want to make sure that everybody feels like that they have the right and responsibility to identify security needs, if in fact there are any. Not go out and look for them and find them, but identify them if they're there. So
what I honestly believe that encourage, yes, because if there's a security, we're working on a position for a safety and security person. A principal may not know what the needs are or see it as, they may not actually know that if it's not secure. And so that's why I think the encourage to involve teachers, other staff members, because in your school improvement team or your school improvement team, there's safety protocols in there that they use, that they sign off every year. What they were referring to a couple sentences ago about the playgrounds is that there's a form where they have to sign off on to say that things are secure. So there's some things that go behind the scenes. I just don't know if we can actually document every month that they went through. I won't say document every month because I want them to be secure. That's not what I'm getting at. I don't know if the onus that I like the word encourage, because we just have people who don't know what they don't know. I'll just be honest there. They don't know what they don't know.
But if we have a safety committee, every school has a safety committee, and the safety committee is required to report at each school improvement team of any concerns that are noted. Our safety committee members do receive some additional training from our safety director. So there are ways to look at and address safety and security issues that we already have in place.
But remember, you're speaking from an expert lens, and we're speaking from educator lens.
Right. But educators still can be trained to look.
Right,
Yeah.
encourage,
Okay.
yes. I don't know if they should. That's all I'm saying is like a teacher, they may not know what to look for is all I'm getting at.
Okay, I'm okay with that. I just don't want them not to feel like that they have a right and a responsibility just to keep their eyes
Right.
open. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because I did hear from one student, one teacher that said, well, we don't have this at our school, but all the other schools do. And it's like, dang, I just don't know that is, well, if that's perception, then we have to fix that perception. But if
Right,
it's
that's-
reality, then, oh my gosh, we have a whole different thing to fix. That's why I
Right.
just don't like the word encourage, but I'm okay with doing that because I
And
know
I
that
think
we're
that would
going to
fall-
have procedures. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would fall under climate.
Okay. All right. And then does our policy need to say anything in there that, that we conduct? Is there anything in the law that says we have to conduct security assessments on any routine basis, Deborah? Or, I mean, or Dr. Faust, does the Department of Public Safety's Division of Emergency Management require that, or that's just what some schools do to help themselves?
So, which one are you on number 7?
Oh, no, I'm not even asking. I'm just, yes. It's really not number 7. It was just a question about security needs assessments. I mean, our county has always been good about doing them. But is it required at any regular frequency by DPI?
I don't know that right off hand, but I can double check.
Yeah, I would be interested in knowing that. And if it's required at some frequency, then I think we should make a number 8, to say that we're going to do it. But yes, but that's not worth holding anything up for.
Yeah, I think that, I don't think there's a requirement for that addresses frequency. I
Okay.
think that a while back there was a requirement that school systems do that, but it didn't give a lot of guidance into how that was done. It could
Okay.
be done in-house or contracted out. But that-
Also,
Okay.
if there's an inspection that our custodial staff, that they do to make sure that doors are, locked when they're supposed to be locked, that they're walking around the perimeter of the building, doing an inspection. Is that part of the walkthrough, Eddie, or am I getting school districts mixed up?
No, I think that, there's a checklist for playgrounds and a checklist for grounds. And then in addition to that, I think you're right that, school custodians, when they leave at the end of the day, they're going to obviously make sure everything's locked up. I think that's part of their process.
Okay. And I believe that to be true. And I know that they do. What I was looking at was more of a higher level security audit so that we can notice trends on, at schools where we need to do a district-wide something. That's what I was talking about with does DPI require that we do a security assessment on any frequency? That's what I was like what True North did for us. Are we required to do that, or because we did that, 2 years ago, and then we've done one, 2 to 5 years before that. So are we required, or that's just something that our district believes to be important?
I don't think there's a requirement.
So I guess I'm asking this group, do we think that we need to make that a board policy that we will conduct a district security assessment on some frequency, or, as needed, or do we want to say that, or we want to just leave that in procedure and up to our safety director and others?
I mean, you look at where we are right now, and I think we need to, I would say, put it in policy. I mean, I think we did, we've had a school shooting, we've had other situations going on. I mean, I wouldn't want to just say, well, we'll leave it up to, happenstance, or, if there's something going on, then we'll do it. We will do one, and then we will do one for 5 years. I mean, I think we should.
I mean, they're
believe-
expensive. They're expensive to do. They're comprehensive to do. And doing them over the summer oftentimes doesn't give you a full analysis of what's going on because there's no people. So I was just wondering if we wanted to put in there that at least every 3 years, because that 3 years sticks in my mind, because that's when like school health advisory, has to update, their, the school wellness plans have to be looked at every 3 years. So like, is there some number, or should we inquire about that?
I mean, I would encourage not putting a number of years to that.
Okay.
And I think the current plan that we have is a good example. I think it's still valid.
It is.
We can update cost, but that's something that we can do in-house. And most of these plans are going to take longer than 3 to 5 years to fully implement.
Yes.
Just based on funding.
Right. Okay. Well, if we don't feel like we need to say it, I guess that would be down to the procedural level, and your department, operations, and the wherever safety department lands. Right now, it's under student support, so it would have to be like a combination of the two.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Those are just. I'm good.
Okay. Anything else on 9220? If not, we'll move that on for first reading. Moving on to 9230, energy conservation. Anything, Mr. Anderson?
No, sir. But
Okay.
I am curious that where is it talking about incentives?
Oh, that's the last sentence. I brought that up earlier. It's the very
Yeah.
last sentence. I mean, what the heck? Is Murray getting money for putting up that big, huge solar panel other than a cost savings?
That Valjean doesn't give cash incentives. Now she has stickers and blow pops.
Yeah,
And she's
awesome.
really good about leaving those, but not cash incentives.
Right. Now, I had a
It says
little bit of a
may be
concern about that.
offered. It does say may be offered, but we have not done that.
I would say let's take that one out. If we decide that something is awesome, then I can't imagine like what it was that Mary Hazel writes him a check for like $100. Thank you.
I'd be willing to bet on that.
Yeah. Mary Hazel does not write a check for $100.
I have no words. Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree. It should be removed.
Okay.
Unless you just said recognize without describing how.
I would say recognize would be they will be recognized for their efforts, because I think that's awesome. And I wanted to give a shout out to Valjean today because, they're commissioning their solar panel, which is awesome. So yeah, I would say, let's just put in the words, let's just recognize and not, give them cash.
So something like schools will be recognized for outstanding efforts toward energy cost reduction or energy conservation or something like that.
Yes. Yeah. Our board thinks it's important, and so we will recognize. So in the body of all of this, where it talks about an energy coordinator at each school, do we have an energy coordinator at each school?
That's typically whoever is in charge of facilities. So yes, there's a designated person at each school that's responsible for facilities. That may be the principal or an assistant principal.
Okay. And is there anywhere in our policy that we talk about what the district energy coordinator does?
Job description.
That's all. I don't mean like what she does, but is there anywhere in here, like, when we say the assistant superintendent for operations does this, do we need to mention in there that?
Well, I think she is the designee. That position is the designee. So a lot of, most all of what this policy states, she does.
Okay. I didn't even know we had an energy coordinator until I got invited to come watch an energy presentation. So she's obviously doing, I thought just the energy people were the somebody downtown who turned off the air conditioning at 6 p.m. So when you have a meeting at night, you have to sweat.
If
I'm
that,
good.
if that happens, then someone's not properly scheduling.
Okay. So that's the school's energy coordinator is being a little miserly.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right, we're down to our final two. If we move 9230 on,
Yep.
9300, we have right off the bat, if we look under B1, there is a typo there, so we need to change that from 2 TO board members to 2 being the proper TWO board members. So we can make that correction. And I think everybody knows what I'm going to say about this policy. Now is the time. I mean, now is the time. We have a loophole in this policy that kind of put us all in a bad place one way or the other. And I think we need to spell it out if we're going to spell it out. If we're not going to spell it out, then I think we're going to need to leave it as it is. But, you know, a lot of people read that second paragraph or the second sentence, or I guess third sentence, about, you know, renaming things for geographic terms or words or terms that have meaning to a given school. And I couldn't get a straight answer from any of the former board members. Well, actually, one of them told me why. You know, if we're not going to name things after people, we need to say that. That's my feeling on this. If we're going to allow it, then we need to allow it. But we had several of the former of the seasoned board members say that it was it clearly says that we can't name it after people, and then we had others 4-3 votes, so you know, pretty much down the middle, that said that doesn't say that. So I think we need to be clearer in what we're saying. Other thoughts?
Well, I would rather not name after people, but I would also like to leave it open that if we get a large benefactor that that has been vetted, we couldn't, like a Michael Jordan, that we wouldn't want to. We might want to be able to name a building after them, but just like, you know, colleges and people and other places do, you know, to name after huge benefactors, but that would have to be like some sort of policy on what large means.
Well, and I think I have a problem just with that. I mean, so if we have an outstanding person that is a great educator, and you know, educators don't make a whole bunch of money, we can't name it after them. But if somebody gives us some money, then we'll give it a name after them. I mean, I think that sets a really, really bad example myself. I mean, so because a person is an outstanding person and does a great thing for New Hanover County schools, we're not going to name anything after them. But if somebody comes with some bucks that may you know, not have a lot to do with our school system, maybe just went through the school system, we're going to give them preference. I mean, to me, that doesn't sell it to me. But
so why did we get this one back? Just because, Deborah, because it's in the 9300 series, and to get it out of the 5400, the old.
I believe it's just coming up to be renumbered.
Okay, so all of the comments that were struck, deleted.
Right.
So that is what the board, the State School Boards Association says we should have.
Well, that is their standard policy. Yes.
Okay.
So, Ms. Grable,
but this is certainly one that is customized across districts all over the state.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mr.
Okay.
Wolford.
So can I just, so it is your understanding then that part there, we could name it after a person if we so chose.
It says the name of the can reflect upon the students. The bottom one, yeah, it's looking to me like what the State School Boards Association recommends is not what we have at all. So
I would say that to use the word recommend is especially for this one. I mean, very often the School Board Association policies have recommendations because they are required by law or because they are,
Right.
you know, what they've been vetted for, you know, limiting liability, et cetera. This one is really a very personal, and I say personal to the board. I mean, it's something that's customized across the state. It was certainly my understanding when I was sitting through all of those discussions about this policy in the past with the past board, was that the intention was to not allow naming of people. But that is an issue. I mean, if the language is not clear and people think it is not clear, all I can say is that was the intent at the time. But if it's not clear, or if people want to do something different now, it would be wise to change that to reflect what the board desires.
Well, again, we had heard quite a long and lengthy discussion on whether you could name it after somebody or you couldn't name it after somebody. You know, and the intent, I mean, as I asked one of the board members that was, I guess, part of writing this policy to begin with, I said, well, why does it not clearly say you can't name it after somebody if that is the intent? And exactly what Ms. Craybill just said was that we want to leave basically I hate to use the word loophole, but a loophole open in case somebody came across with, you know, a sizable donation, that we could still name it after a person. And as you heard from the discussion, we had some board members say, oh, it says we can't name it after somebody. But then we had others say that, well, you could if in certain you know, so like I say, there's a lot of back and forth. You know, I think our policy should clearly say what we want to say. And this the way it's written right now does not do that.
I agree, Mr. Wildebohr should say what you want it to say.
So I am, and to back to that point too, when we talked about, you know, surveying, you know, there's nothing, we don't have to survey anybody to get names, and we don't have to take what the survey says. So it's really, our board can decide each time if they want to. And so that just makes it contentious, you know, each time. So I feel like we should you and I cannot make this decision, because obviously it's you know, on what to do with this policy, because we don't see it the same. So we may need to talk to our whole board, you know, about it again, to not in a consensus, you know, review. It might have to be a separate one. So I am right now going through, sending it through 9300 is just what 5400 says. So I would be okay with sending it through like this, but you know it's going to get pulled. So we have to just be prepared for that.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I'm sorry, is there language that one of you would want to add for consideration from the policy committee?
Well, and I'll be honest, I think I'm on both sides of the equation in a certain way, because I think we should be able to name after people. But that's, like I say, we had several board members that said that this says you can't. So, I mean, I wouldn't have a problem in adding in words or terms that have a meaning to the person or a person's name, because Ms. Craybill even just mentioned that in certain situations, we could name it after a person.
Well, I would not want this policy to imply that we have to go back through all of our buildings and facilities that are named for people to take off all those names. I mean, that is what my worst fear is, by saying that, by putting in there that we can't name the facility for that. But, and I don't necessarily think that surveys of the community and are the ways to go about naming our facilities, because certain people mean certain things to certain other people. And so it's too hard, you know, to say this person has more meaning than this person, you know, to the school. And I don't want to get into that. I don't want to drag families through it. I don't want to drag individuals through it. I don't think we should be naming as our first go-to schools and facilities after people.
Well, again, I think then we need to say that. I mean, right now, I think the one thing we can agree upon on this is the fact that the board was divided on what this says. You know, we did have some people say that it specifically, the intent of this was to not name it after people, but that's not what it says per se. And we had
It
other
does
people.
say that. It says we will be named only for geographic terms. That's what it says. And that
No,
in there,
or
it does
was-
not say. A
That's
name
not
is
what it
not
says.
it does say that. It says any new or renamed school will be named for geographic terms. New or renamed facilities may only be named for geographic terms or with words or terms that have meaning to the school. And I don't interpret words or terms that have meaning to the school to be a person.
Well, again, that's your interpretation, and you're definitely entitled to your interpretation. But why do we have a policy that has, we have to interpret it? You know, your interpretation is obviously different than my interpretation. So why don't we state what we mean and mean what we say?
And I don't want to butt in, but I just want to give a little context of sitting, having sat in those meetings and listening. And the original, my recollection is the original proposal was to only allow names for geographic terms, period. But then there was a consideration of, well, what if you want to name the gym after the school mascot? And so the language, words or terms that have meaning for the school was intended to allow for the use of mascot or, something like that that's symbolizes the school itself or the student population. Now, clearly, if that is being interpreted to be named after a person and that is not the will of the board, then it needs to be clarified. And I agree again with Mr. Wildebohr. It should be crystal clear what, at the time I thought the language was clear, but if it is not to board members or others, it needs to be clarified again.
Well, and I mean, really, it would be very simple. To say, to add this in, and I'm not recommending we do this because I don't necessarily agree with it. But if we're saying we do not want it named after a person, then we put one more line in there that says, that the Board of Education does not feel naming a facility after a specific person is within our. We don't agree with that, or we word it in some form or fashion that way there. Then we don't have any ambiguity left. It's not like, well, what does that mean? Like I say, we had 50% of the folks, and I understand we don't have to listen to the folks, but I mean, I don't again know why we would ask questions if we don't want to listen to them. But in any case, 52% of the folks said that we want it named after a specific person. So they all interpreted it a different way also. So, I mean, if the teachers, parents, alumni all feel that it can be read that way, 3 out of 7 board members felt it could be read that way. I agree 100% that we need to, with Deborah, that we need to clearly say what we mean and mean what we say. And again, I don't think this does it now.
All right, so I'm going to offer some words like Deborah suggested, because it does not say anywhere in here that we have to survey the community. It gives us clear responsibility for naming the schools. So if it says, where it says new or renamed facilities may be named only for geographic terms or mascots. And then,
okay.
I mean, if that was the original intent, then let's put that word in there, mascots. And if we feel like we need to say they will not be named for people going forward, because I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to take off anybody's name just because we're making a sweeping statement about it. But it doesn't say in our current policy right now that we have to survey, that we have to have community input at all. Mm-hmm. I mean, so we have to give sufficient time for public input and comment, but we do that at call to the audience on everything we do. And we don't necessarily have to follow what the most people who come and talk to us say if we don't believe it's in the best interest of our school district. So that's, so when we wrote, in order to allow sufficient time for public input, the board may consider what the public says, may consider. Doesn't say we have to. Just like we say the board may consider what people's thoughts are on ruling out suspensions, or what for pre-K through 2. It's ultimately our decision. So I would say if we're gonna move it forward, then we need to just put the words mascots in, if that's what it was. And if we want, and if Pete, if you and I want to say no names, let's put no names. If we think that's clear. I think it was everybody interpreted as they wanted, and our vote decided, what it was. Some people interpreted this way, so their vote was yes. Some people interpreted it one way, so their vote was no. And that's how we do most of our business.
Yeah. I mean, if that's the will of the board, that, we have if that's the intent of what was written originally, that it's the mascot, the geographic terms or mascot. I mean, I think that's a lot clearer than words that, may have meaning.
Well, let's try that then. Let's try that, send it to the whole board. And then, so you and I aren't the ones, just, sitting here butting heads. And we'll just send that, and we'll see what the board has to say.
Okay.
Is that all right?
With that, I'm fine with that.
So we're just going to add in, instead of or words with terms that have meaning, we'll pay for geographic terms or school mascots.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, there was discussion of, nicknames, and I don't know what I don't know the mascot incorporates everything that was considered it would be, but I don't know enough about all of your individual schools and what some of the names might have, importance for. I think that gets to the heart of.
Well, that at least gives us some place to start.
Okay. And finally, look at that. We are going to get done. That's awesome. 9400, sale, disposal, and lease of board-owned real property. Mary Hazel, would you want to jump in on this one, or is that a Eddie thing, or?
Probably both of us.
Okay.
I'm gonna let Eddie go first because he's probably more prepared.
Well, I'm going to be quick. I didn't have any comments.
All righty. Mary Hazel?
I think it reads as our current policy did, so I think I'm fine.
The only question I had was on letter B, where it says that we lease available board-owned buildings and land to charter schools when required by law. Do we want to put in lab schools? In case there's more
they
than.
kind of fall under the same thing, but you could say charter/lab schools. Sure.
I would prefer to do that, because there seems to be, when you ask different people, is a lab school a charter school? Well, it's a special kind of charter school. So I think we should just call it out, because especially since we are involved in it, clearly.
I don't think we should give away any more of our schools. That's just my.
Right. No, I agree with you that we don't want to do it as much as possible. That's why by law.
Right. So if the state, we're going to do everything we can to get our schools back and build them up. But yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I don't have any intentions of bringing to the board that we give away any schools.
Okay. And so I'm not married to lab schools. I just wanted to make sure that we were covered. So
I understand. Yes.
So we don't have to add that. And then, so this one, does this mirror or go in conjunction with policy 6560 that we've already talked about? We already talked about sale and disposal, or maybe it was just stuff and it wasn't real property. Is that what?
Yeah, it's different law that covers those.
Okay. All right. So that gets a big old move on.
All right. So, Ms. Crable, I will entertain a motion to, let's see, what are we moving on? We're moving on.
Okay. All right. So there's going to be, Mr. Wilbur, there's going to be several motions. Okay. All right. So, we have policies that we will hold in the policy committee. That's my first motion. And that will be the draft policy for homeschooled students,
Mhm.
the student promotion and accountability, 3420.
We're leaving that
20
alone. We're
where-
leaving 3420 alone. We're not going to touch that.
Right, but it's still going to be reviewed we're going to review it in the next policies, what I understood. Is that right, Dr. Smith?
Pretty sure she said we were going to leave it alone, not touch it at all. So
Yeah, I thought we were leaving that one alone. We're
that
gonna
one, we're
just
leaving
leave
Okay.
it
it.
alone.
All right, I
So-
thought
Sorry
that
about
she
that.
wanted to.
I was on mute. I apologize. Yes, we are not going to bring that one back before the board.
No.
Okay,
So-
all right, cool. All right, so it will be the draft policy, 2230,
Right.
6140.
Right.
Wait, there's one other with the holding policy I had in orange.
9120.
And 9120.
Right.
Yes. Okay. So
That's your motion?
that's motion number one.
All right. I second. How do you vote, Ms. Craybill?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay. And then all the rest of the policies.
No, there's a bunch. Hold on. We have to,
Yep.
we decided last time to break it out. Ones
Okay.
that were going forward with no word changes. The ones that
Okay.
are going forward with no word changes were 6524 network security, 6560 disposal of surplus property, 9125 participation by minority businesses, and 9400 sale and disposal of board-owned real property.
Ms.
That's your motion.
Crable, I thought that 6524 was changed to include change technology director to assistant superintendent of technology.
Oh my gosh, you're right. So that
That's
one,
correct.
so take that one off. Sorry. I checked it with the wrong color.
Okay. I second that.
Does anybody, did I get all those? Does that match
So-
what other people have?
9,000. And then 9125
With what I gave you to get,
and 9,400.
Oh, wait. Oh, you know what? I skipped a piece of paper. Yes. 9,000 facilities planning needs to be added to that one also.
Okay.
So what 9,000, 9125 and 9,400 are those?
9,000 and is ready to move on with no words.
I just
Okay.
want to be sure I got all three of them. They're just those three.
The I had 6560 disposal of surplus property, 9,000 planning for facilities needs, and 9125 participation by minority businesses, and 9,400 sale and disposal of board-owned real property.
Thank you.
And you know what? I just saw in one of my colors, keeping in the one that we just did, the first one I just made, I'd like to amend that motion to add 9120 bidding for construction work. I thought we were putting that on hold to get some things right.
You said
Did I just
that. No, you
Pardon
said
me?
it.
You said that one.
You said that one.
I did
You
say that?
did.
Okay, all right,
Yes.
sorry. Okay, so now we go through the ones that we are moving forward, but that have wording changes. 6425.
Do you want to vote on that
Oh,
one?
I'm sorry,
first?
yes, sorry, that's right. Yes,
And I also vote yes. Okay.
okay.
Carry on, Ms. Craybill.
Okay, so the other ones were 6524 network security, 6525 instructional materials services, 6530 resource conservation, 6540 hazardous materials, 6550 vandalism, 9130 supervision of construction contracts, 9200 care and maintenance of facilities, 9205 pest management, 9210 care and maintenance of grounds and outdoor equipment, 9220 security of facilities. 9230, energy conservation. 9300, naming schools and facilities. And, oh, wait a minute. And, oh, well, you know what? I skipped a couple. 9110, selection and use of architects. 9115, pre-qualification of bidders for construction projects. So that was like a whole boatload, but most of them, we had a few wording changes.
All right, so that's your motion. I'll second it.
Yes.
How do you vote, Ms. Craybill?
Well, hold on a sec. Deborah, does that seem to match up with what you have?
I'm sorry, Miss. Did you say 9010 9010 and 90?
9010.
Okay.
No, yes,
There's no-
9010. I don't think I did say that.
And
then I did
9020.
say 9020 and 9030. Yeah.
Okay, those three. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
All right.
That page, I had it in the wrong order. Okay, so
And how do
yes,
you vote?
that's my motion.
How do you vote, Ms. Craybill?
Yes.
And I vote yes. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh my gosh, yes. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thank
And
you very
listening.
much. I appreciate it. I second that. Ms. Craybill, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. So thank you all for your time today. Appreciate it. And we will see you soon.
Good
I'm
afternoon.
gonna
Bye.
go out and fix some horses.